Raoul stood on the deck of the small wooden ship as it rocked gently in the harbor. The sun was sinking low, painting the waters of the Caribbean in red and gold. He gripped a rolled piece of parchment in his hand, the map that had guided him. Here, it was old and worn, with faded lines that claimed to mark the path to a hidden Mayan temple lost for centuries. Raoul had dreamed of this journey for years, and now it was finally beginning. Tomas, his closest friend, leaned against the rail beside him. Unlike Raoul, Tomas was quiet and careful. He was not driven by gold but by curiosity. He had studied old tales and was fascinated by ancient civilizations. Yet even he admitted that the promise of treasure was tempting. A man who returned home with riches could change not only his own life, but also the lives of his family. Miguel, the youngest of the three, stood near the crates on the deck. He was strong, full of energy, and always laughing. His pockets already held small trinkets he had collected from villages along the coast. He believed luck followed him wherever he went. He was certain the jungle would reward him with more than he could carry. The locals in the harbor town had watched them load supplies with quiet eyes. Old men shook their heads, and women whispered warnings when Raoul asked a guide to help lead them into the jungle. The man refused. He crossed his arms and said the temple they sought was sacred, guarded by the spirits of Mayan kings. He warned that curses would fall on anyone who disturbed what was buried. Raoul only smiled at such words. He did not believe in curses, only in strength and determination. That night, before setting out, the three explorers sat around a small fire near the edge of the forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and strange flowers. Insects sang from the trees, and the jungle seemed alive with hidden movement. Tomas poked at the fire and said quietly, "Perhaps the people are right. Maybe this path should remain closed." Raoul looked at him with sharp eyes. "We came this far, Tomas. Do you think fortune favors those who turn back at the first whisper of fear? The temple waits for us. Gold, jade, masks of kings, enough to make us remember forever." Miguel laughed loudly, tossing a stick into the fire. "I would rather be remembered for living rich than for dying poor. Tomorrow, we will walk into that jungle, and by the end of it, we will carry more than stories." The fire crackled, but in the shadows beyond the light, the forest seemed to listen. The next morning, the men began their march. Raoul carried the map close to his chest, checking its faded marks against the rivers and hills they crossed. The jungle swallowed them quickly. Tall trees formed a roof overhead, letting only small rays of sunlight through. Vines hung like ropes, and the ground was covered in roots that threatened to trip them with each step. Their progress was slow, but Raoul's determination never wavered. Tomas carried most of the supplies, his face often shining with sweat. He muttered at times about the weight of the food, the ropes, and the tools, but he did not complain loudly. Miguel moved like a man in his element, whistling, cutting paths with his machete, and grinning at every strange bird or monkey that crossed their way. By the third day, the journey was harder. Rains fell without warning, turning paths into rivers of mud. Mosquitoes swarmed around them, biting until their skin burned. Still, Raoul pushed forward, eyes always searching for the next landmark the map promised. On the fourth night, they stopped near a broken wall of stone half hidden under roots. Tomas examined it with great care. The carvings on the wall showed figures of Mayan priests holding torches. Their eyes were carved wide, staring toward the jungle. Tomas traced the carvings with his fingers and said, "These are warnings. They are not guiding us forward. They are telling us to stay away." Raoul shook his head. "Every warning is also a clue. They point the way. We are close." Miguel grinned and slapped the stone with his hand, then let the old kings watch. I will gladly take their gold while they sit in silence." That night, Raoul dreamed of fire. He saw a temple burning with torches that never went out. He saw masks of jade that seemed to move like living faces. When he woke, his heart was heavy, but he told no one of the dream. As the days stretched on, their supplies began to shrink. The jungle seemed endless, a maze of trees and rivers that twisted in every direction. Yet the map guided them true. Rawls' eyes grew brighter each time he matched the land to the markings on the parchment. He was certain that they were walking the same paths the Mayans themselves had built centuries before died at last. On the seventh day of their journey, they came upon a stone road buried under the soil. The road was cracked but still strong, a line that led deeper into the heart of the forest. Vines crawled across it, but when Miguel brushed them aside with his machete, the stones gleamed as if waiting for footsteps once more. Rawls' voice trembled with excitement. "This is it, the way to the temple. The treasure is near." Tomas looked down the road, his heart filled with unease. The jungle seemed to grow darker in that direction, as though the trees leaned closer together to block the light. He said, "Raul, think again. Perhaps the treasure is real, but so is the curse. Do we want to carry gold if it also carries death?" But Rawls' mind was set. Death waits for every man in the end. Better to meet it with gold in hand than with empty pockets. Miguel raised his pack and laughed. "Then let us walk the road of kings." The three men stepped onto the ancient stones, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and greed. Above them, unseen birds cried in harsh voices, and the jungle watched in silence as the last Mayan treasure hunters began their final path. The stone road stretched ahead like a forgotten memory, half hidden under years of roots and soil. Raul walked at the front, his steps quick with excitement. His eyes shone as though he could already see the treasures waiting at the end. Tomas followed behind, slower, his gaze moving between the dark trees and the carved stones beneath their feet. Miguel brought up the rear, humming to himself, his machete swinging in his hand to cut away vines that tried to block their path. The jungle around them was alive with sound. Birds shrieked in the distance. Insects buzzed close to their ears. The thick air carried the smell of damp wood and old earth. Each breath felt heavy, and sweat clung to their clothes, yet Raul did not slow down. He believed every step carried them closer to the golden masks and jade idols that had filled his dreams. By midday, the sun fought its way through the trees, sending beams of light onto the stones. Tomas paused to study strange carvings along the side of the road. They were faint, nearly erased by time, but they showed figures of men carrying offerings to tall pyramids. Their faces were carved with sharp lines, and their hands held bowls of fire. Tomas touched the stone and whispered, "They built this road to lead to their temple." But the fire in their hands looks like a warning. Raul only glanced at it. "They built this road to show the way. You see warnings because you want to see them. I see guidance. The temple is close." Miguel laughed, wiping sweat from his face. "If they carried fire, then perhaps they meant to light the way for us. Let them guide us. I only hope their temple has water to drink, because this air burns hotter than fire itself." They pushed forward again. Hours passed, and the road wound deeper into the forest. At times, it broke apart, swallowed by tree roots. At other times, it rose above the ground like a bridge, leading them across streams that rushed beneath. The builders of the road had worked with skill, and even after centuries, much of it still stood. Raul saw it as proof that the temple would also remain, waiting for them untouched. When evening came, they set camp near a section of broken stone. Miguel gathered wood for a fire, while Tomas studied the map by torchlight. He frowned, for the marks on the parchment were faded, and the rivers drawn did not fully match the land they had crossed. "Raul," he said softly, "what if this map leads us not to a temple but to a grave? What if the ones who made it wanted no one to return?" Raul's face hardened. "If they wanted no one to return, they would not have built this road. Look at it, Tomas. It was made to be walked. We are simply walking it again." That night, as they slept, the jungle did not rest. Strange sounds echoed around them. Leaves rustled though no wind blew. At one point, Miguel woke and swore he saw shapes moving between the trees. But when he raised his torch, there was nothing but shadows. He lay back down, muttering that his eyes were only playing tricks in the dark. The next morning, the men marched again. The air grew thicker, and the path darker. The trees leaned so close together that sunlight barely touched the ground. They walked in dim light, guided only by the road beneath their feet. Tomas began to feel as though the forest itself was pushing them away, trying to swallow the road and hide it forever. Around midday, they reached a clearing. At the center stood a tall stone pillar covered in carvings. Birds scattered as they entered the space, their cries sharp and piercing. The pillar showed a great serpent coiled around a pyramid. Its eyes were carved with care, sharp and unblinking, as if watching them. At the base of the pillar, smaller carvings showed men kneeling before the serpent, their faces carved in fear. Tomas stared at it for a long time. This is no guide. This is a warning. They carved fear itself into stone. But Raoul stepped closer, running his hand over the serpent's scales. A serpent guards treasure. That is what this means. Do not twist the meaning into fear. They guarded their temple with stories, but we are not afraid. Miguel whistled and said, I would rather meet a stone serpent than a real one. Let us keep moving before night falls again. The road stretched on, leading them through swampy ground. Their boots sank into the mud, and mosquitoes swarmed around them. Tomas grew more uneasy with every step. He began to notice faces in the trees, shapes formed by bark and shadows. They seemed to watch, silent and still. When he pointed them out, Raoul dismissed them. You see spirits because you wish to see them. I see only trees. By the fifth day, food was running low. The men ate sparingly, and their water grew warm in its skins. Still, Raoul's spirit did not weaken. His eyes gleamed brighter with each sign of old stone buried under roots. Tomas, however, grew silent. He watched Raoul and wondered if greed had already placed a curse upon his friend's mind. That evening, they reached another clearing where part of a wall stood. It was carved with rows of faces, each one staring forward with hollow eyes. The wall stretched across the clearing like a barrier. Raoul was quick to press his hands against it. Searching for an opening, he found a small break where the stones had collapsed. Beyond it lay more of the road. Tomas whispered, These faces were carved to watch. They are guardians. We should not pass. But Raoul had already begun moving stones, clearing the way. His voice was firm. Guardians or not, we will pass. This road was not made to stop men. It was made to lead them. And it leads us. Double quotes Miguel, though uneasy, followed Raoul. Tomas stood still for a moment, staring at the hollow eyes. A cold wind seemed to move across the clearing, though no leaves stirred. His heart pounded, and he almost turned back. Yet in the end, he could not leave his friends to walk alone. With heavy steps, he followed them through the break in the wall. That night, when they lit their fire, Raoul spoke with triumph. We are close. I can feel it. Tomorrow, perhaps the day after, we will see the temple. The treasure is waiting. Miguel grinned, though his eyes shifted nervously toward the trees. Then let us claim it before anything else claims us. Tomas said nothing. He stared into the flames. The faces from the stone wall burned into his memory. The jungle whispered around them, and the night pressed close, heavy and watchful. The road was guiding them, yes, but to what end? The morning sun rose weakly through the thick roof of the jungle. The air was heavy with mist, and the road ahead looked darker than before. Raoul walked at the front with steady steps, his eyes fixed on the ancient stones that had carried them this far. Miguel followed behind him, cutting vines that had grown across the path. Tomas trailed at the back, his heart uneasy. He felt the forest pressing closer each day, as if it wanted to hide what lay ahead. By noon, the air was so hot that every breath burned in their chests. Sweat soaked their shirts, and their boots sank into the damp ground with every step. Yet, Raoul pressed forward without pause. He was driven by the thought of treasure. His dreams were filled with golden masks, shining jade, and the glory of discovering what others had only whispered about. Tomas studied the map again and again, his fingers tracing the fading lines. It showed that the temple was near. But what the map did not show were the warnings they had seen carved in stone. Faces in walls, serpents around pyramids, men bowing in fear. These were not signs of welcome. They were signs of caution. Miguel, however, cared little for warnings. His spirit was high, and his laughter rang out through the trees. The jungle is testing us, he said with a grin. The harder it becomes, the greater the reward must be. Think of the gold. My friends, think of the masts we will carry home. Tomas said nothing. He only hoped they would live to carry anything home at all. Late in the afternoon, the road began to rise. The ground under their feet turned from soft soil to firm stone. Vines and roots still covered much of it, but when Miguel cut them away, the stones gleamed as though polished by unseen hands. The road ended at the base of a hill, and there, hidden by the jungle's embrace, stood the temple. It rose high above them, its steps wide and steep, climbing toward the sky. Roots wound across its walls, and trees grew from cracks in the stone. Yet the shape of the pyramid was clear. Carvings covered its surface. Carvings of kings wearing tall headdresses, of warriors carrying spears, of animals both real and strange. At the top stood a doorway like a dark mouth waiting to swallow whoever entered. Raoul stopped at the sight and dropped to his knees, his eyes filled with awe. At last, he whispered, "The Temple of the Kings, the treasure of the Mayans. We have found it." Miguel cheered and raised his arms. "We are the first to stand here in centuries. The temple belongs to us now." Tomas stared in silence. His stomach tightened as he looked up at the carvings. The faces of the kings seemed alive, their eyes filled with judgment. The doorway at the top looked less like an entrance and more like a warning. He whispered, "Perhaps it was hidden for a reason. Perhaps it should have remained lost." But Raoul was already moving. He set his pack down and began to climb the steps. Each step echoed in the air, as if the stone remembered the feet of those who had walked it before. Miguel followed quickly, eager to see what lay inside. Tomas had no choice but to climb after them, though each step felt heavier than the last. At the top, the doorway gaped before them. Its stone frame was carved with figures of men holding torches and looking upward in fear. Inside, the darkness was deep, untouched by light for centuries. Raoul lit a torch, its flame casting flickering shadows on the walls. He stepped forward without hesitation, and the others followed. The air inside was cool and heavy, filled with the scent of old earth and stone. The walls were painted with bright colors that had survived the years. Reds, greens, and blues told stories of kings, battles, and rituals. The deeper they walked, the more the walls seemed alive. Figures danced in the firelight, their eyes following the men. After a short passage, they reached a wide chamber. At its center stood a stone altar, and on the altar lay treasures beyond their dreams, golden masks with eyes of jade, necklaces of shining stones, bracelets carved with delicate designs. Small statues of gods stood among them, their faces carved with strange expressions. Raoul's breath caught in his throat. He stepped forward and touched one of the masks with shaking hands. "It is real," he said in wonder. "It is all real." Miguel laughed loudly and rushed to the altar. He lifted a golden statue and held it high. "We are rich," he shouted, "rich beyond measure. The jungle has rewarded us." Tomas, however, did not touch the treasure. He stayed near the wall, his eyes moving from one painted figure to the next. The painting showed men carrying treasures, away from the altar, only to fall in battle, in sickness, in fire. None of the painted men lived long. Their hands held gold, but their faces showed fear. Tomas whispered, "This is not a reward. It is a trap. The treasure is cursed." Raoul ignored him. He began filling his pack with gold and jade, his face lit with joy. Miguel followed his lead, stuffing statues and bracelets into his bag. Their laughter echoed through the chamber. The sound was strange in the old temple, as if it did not belong. Then, as Miguel lifted another mask, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a stone cracked loudly. The torchlight flickered, and shadows moved along the walls as though the painted figures had come to life. Tomas shouted, "Stop! Leave it. We must leave it all behind." But Raoul held his pack tightly and shook his head. "We have come too far. Nothing will stop us." Now, Miguel laughed again, though his voice trembled. "It is only the earth settling. The temple has slept too long. Now it wakes for us." The ground shook once more, harder this time. A golden idol fell from the altar and crashed to the floor, its face staring upward with empty eyes. The The sound echoed through the temple like a drumbeat. Raoul grabbed the idol and stuffed it into his pack. "It is ours," he said firmly. "All of it is ours." Tomas felt his heart pound. He knew in that moment that the warnings were true. The treasure was real, but so was the curse. And they had awakened it? The air inside the temple grew colder as Raoul and Miguel filled their packs with treasure. Their laughter rang out, echoing against the painted walls, but the sound carried a strange edge. It was too loud, too sharp, as if the temple itself was mocking them. Tomas stood back, his eyes fixed on the trembling flames of the torch. The fire bent and shook though no wind touched it. The golden mass seemed to watch them. Their jade eyes glimmered in the light, and Tomas felt a shiver run down his spine. He whispered, "We should leave this place now. It is not meant for us." Raoul turned sharply, his face glowing with greed. "Do not speak like that, Tomas. This is why we came. This treasure is proof that we were right. Think of what it will mean when we return. We will be remembered as the men who uncovered the last treasure of the Mayans." Miguel lifted a statue shaped like a jaguar, its body carved in pure gold. He grinned widely. "We will be kings ourselves when we bring this home." But even as he spoke, a low rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling in thin streams, and one of the painted figures cracked down the middle. The eyes of the figure seemed to widen in the firelight, and for a moment Tomas thought it was alive. "Enough," Tomas said firmly. "The temple is warning us. We must leave before it is too late." Raoul ignored him. He tightened the straps of his pack and turned toward the doorway. "We have what we came for. The temple can fall to dust for all I care. We are leaving with the treasure." Miguel laughed, though his voice sounded unsteady. He followed Raoul, carrying his heavy pack filled with idols and gold. Tomas, though reluctant, had no choice but to follow them out. He could not abandon his friends, even as his heart warned him of the curse. Outside, the sky was covered with dark clouds. The jungle had grown silent, too silent. No birds called, no insects sang. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Raoul looked around with pride. "The gods could not stop us. We have won." But as they set up camp at the base of the temple, strange things began to happen. That night, the wind howled through the trees though the air was still. Their fire flickered, struggling to stay lit, as if unseen hands tried to snuff it out. Shadows moved on the edges of the clearing, twisting and shifting in shapes that looked like men. Tomas stared into the darkness and swore he saw tall figures, with feathered headdresses watching them from the trees. Miguel laughed when Tomas spoke of it. "You see ghosts because you want to see them. They are not real." Yet when he lay down, his eyes darted nervously to the shadows until sleep claimed him. Raoul refused to admit fear. He held a golden mask close to his chest as he slept, as if the treasure would protect him. But his dreams betrayed him. He saw fire spreading across the temple, voices chanting in a language he did not know. He woke in a sweat, his hands shaking. Though he told no one of the dream, the next morning they began their journey back down the road. The jungle looked different. The trees leaned closer together, their branches twisting into strange shapes. The air felt heavy, pressing against their skin. Even Miguel grew quiet as they marched out. By midday, the first disaster struck. Raoul was walking at the front when a sharp crack split the air. The stone from the broken road shifted under his foot, and he nearly fell into a pit hidden by roots. Only Tomas's quick hands pulled him back. They looked down and saw a dark hole filled with sharp rocks at the bottom. Raoul's face turned pale, but he forced a laugh. "The jungle is testing us again." "Nothing more." But Tomas shook his head. "No, the curse has begun. It wants us gone." The second sign came at night. Miguel had been restless, tossing in his sleep. Suddenly, he screamed and sat upright, his face pale and his body shaking. "They were here," he gasped, "men with masks, standing around me. They stared at me with eyes of fire." Tomas tried to calm him, but Raoul brushed it aside. "Dreams cannot harm us. They are only in your mind." Yet even Raoul could not ignore the next sign. When he opened his pack the next morning, he found that one of the golden idols had changed. Its face, once calm and smiling, now looked twisted in anger. Its eyes were no longer smooth but rough, as though carved in haste. Raoul stared at it for a long time. Before shoving it back into the pack, he did not speak of it again, but his hands trembled as he tied the straps. The forest grew darker each day, even when the sun shone. Strange cries echoed in the distance, cries that did not sound like any bird or animal they knew. At times, Tomas felt eyes watching them from the trees. Once, he turned quickly and swore he saw a figure vanish into the leaves. Miguel's health began to fail. His strong body grew weak, and sweat covered his skin though the air was not hot. He stumbled as he walked, and by evening his face burned. With fever, Raoul tried to lift him, but even his strength could not carry both Miguel and the heavy pack of treasure. Leave it, Tomas urged. Throw the treasure away. It is killing him. But Raoul's face hardened. We did not come this far to turn back with empty hands. Miguel will live. The gold is ours. That night, the storm came. The sky opened with thunder and lightning, and rain poured down in sheets. Their fire died quickly, and they huddled under trees as water soaked them. Lightning lit the forest again and again, and in each flash Tomas saw figures standing in the rain, their faces covered with golden masks. They did not move, yet they were closer each time the lightning struck. Tomas shouted, "Raoul, do you not see them? They are here. The curse is real." Raoul pressed his hands over his eyes and refused to answer. Miguel lay on the ground, his breath shallow, whispering words in a language none of them knew. The storm raged through the night, and when morning came, the road ahead looked longer and darker than ever. The treasure weighed heavy in their packs, but heavier still was the curse that now walked with them. The first signs had shown themselves, and Tomas knew with a certainty that the jungle would not let them leave unpunished. The storm had left the jungle soaked, water dripped from every leaf, and the road of stone was covered in mud. Raoul, Tomas, and Miguel looked like broken men as they prepared to march again. Their clothes were wet and heavy, their packs sagging with the weight of gold and jade. The treasure no longer looked bright in the daylight. Instead, it seemed darker, as if the rain had washed away its shine. Miguel could hardly walk. His fever had worsened, and every step was a struggle. He leaned on Tomas for support, his skin burning with heat. Sometimes he muttered in his sleep, speaking words neither of the others understood. At times, the words sounded like chants, rising and falling with rhythm. Tomas felt a chill each time he heard them, for he feared they were not Miguel's own, but the voice of something older. Raoul refused to stop. His eyes were hollow, but still burned with greed. "We are close to the edge of the jungle," he said again and again, though he did not know for certain. "We will reach safety. Then all this will be worth it." Tomas carried both fear and anger in his heart. He wanted to drop the treasure where it lay and carry only Miguel. But Raoul's stubbornness made that impossible. Raoul would never leave the gold, and Tomas could not abandon them both. So he walked, his body aching, his mind filled with dread. The jungle was no longer the same place they had entered. The birds had gone silent, and the insects sang only in short bursts, as if warning them. At times, strange shapes moved in the trees. Once Tomas saw glowing eyes staring at them through the branches. When he looked again, they were gone. By the second day, Miguel's strength had nearly left him. His steps grew slower until at last he collapsed on the stone road. His body trembled, and his eyes stared upward without focus. Tomas knelt beside him, pressing a wet cloth to his head. "He cannot go on," he said firmly. "Raoul, if we do not leave the treasure, we will lose him." Raoul's face twisted with rage and desperation. He dropped his pack on the ground. "Do you not see, Tomas? If we leave the treasure, then everything we suffered will be for nothing. We did not come this far to walk away with empty hands." Tomas looked at his friend and saw how greed had changed him. Raoul was no longer the strong leader he once admired. His eyes looked haunted, his voice sharp and harsh. The treasure had taken hold of him. "Would you trade his life for gold?" Tomas asked, his voice heavy with sorrow. Raoul said nothing. He only bent down, lifted Miguel's limp body, and pulled him onto his shoulders. with the weight of both. Man and treasure, Raoul staggered forward, his steps clumsy but determined. That night, they camped under a wide tree. The fire would not stay lit for long, and the shadows seemed to move closer with each flicker of flame. Tomas sat awake, staring into the darkness, while Raoul finally slept. Exhausted from carrying Miguel. Then Tomas heard it, a soft sound, like chanting, rising from the trees. He stood quickly, his hand reaching for his knife. The voices grew louder, and in the faint light of the moon, he saw them, tall figures, covered in masks of gold, standing among the trees. They did not move, yet their presence pressed against his chest like a weight. Tomas blinked, and they were gone. Only the whisper of leaves remained. When morning came, he said nothing. Raoul would not believe him, and Miguel was too weak to understand. But Tomas knew now that the curse followed them step by step. On the third day of their return, disaster struck again as they crossed a stream. Miguel slipped from Raoul's back and fell into the water. Tomas rushed to pull him out, but the current dragged him under the surface for a moment. When they lifted him out, his body was colder, his breath shallow. His fever seemed to burn brighter, and his skin grew pale. Raoul cursed the jungle, cursed the rain, cursed everything but the treasure. He pressed the golden mask against his chest and shouted, "They will not take this from me. I will not give it up." Tomas watched him in silence. In that moment, he saw that Raoul was no longer speaking. As himself, it was as if the mask in his hand spoke through him, pulling at his mind, twisting his will. That night, Miguel opened his eyes and looked at Tomas. His lips moved, but the words that came out were not his. They were old, broken sounds, like the language carved on the temple walls. Tomas froze as the voice grew stronger. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. Miguel's eyes closed, and he lay still once more. The jungle grew darker with every passing hour. The road seemed longer than before, stretching endlessly ahead. Tomas no longer believed they would ever leave it. Each tree looked the same, each bend in the road led only to more shadows. The forest wanted them lost. By the fourth day, Miguel could no longer move. Raoul laid him down under a tree and stood over him, his face torn between anger and grief. Tomas knelt by Miguel's side, holding his hand. He whispered prayers for him, though his voice shook. Raoul turned to Tomas, his eyes wild. "If he dies, it is because of weakness, not because of the treasure. Do not speak to me again of curses. This goal will bring us life, not death." But Tomas knew Raoul was lying, both to him and to himself. The treasure had poisoned them, and the curse had taken root. As night fell again, the jungle came alive with whispers. Tomas heard chanting once more, louder this time. He saw shadows moving beyond the fire, shapes of men with tall headdresses and glowing eyes. He gripped his knife but knew it was useless. The curse was not made of flesh and blood. Miguel lay still, his breath shallow, his face pale. Tomas feared that by morning he would be gone, and if that happened, he wondered if the curse would claim Raoul next. The journey back had begun, but it was no return to safety. It was a march deeper into the grip of something ancient and merciless. The night passed heavy with silence. The fire had gone out long before sunrise, leaving only ashes glowing faintly. Tomas woke first, shivering in the damp air. He leaned over Miguel, checking his breath. It was still there, but faint, as though each breath was pulled from him with great effort. His skin looked gray in the weak light of morning. Raoul stirred next, clutching the golden mask against his chest like a child holding a toy. His eyes were red, and his face showed lines of exhaustion. Yet the first thing he did was count the treasure, running his fingers over the gold and jade, whispering to himself that it was all still there. Tomas could not hold back his anger any longer. "Raoul, can you not see what this has done to us? Miguel is dying. We are lost in this cursed jungle. And still you carry that gold as if it matters more than our lives." Raoul's face hardened. "It does matter more. We came here for this. Without it, we are nothing but fools who wasted our strength. With it, we will be remembered. We will be rich, powerful, respected. Would you throw all that away now?" Tomas looked at his friend with sorrow. the Raul he had known. The man who once laughed freely and led with courage was gone. In his place stood a shadow of greed and obsession. The day's march was slow. Tomas carried Miguel on his back, while Raul staggered forward with his heavy pack of treasure. The jungle seemed endless, twisting in circles. Though they followed the ancient stone road, the silence pressed in on them, broken only by the buzz of insects and the distant cry of unseen creatures. By midday, Tomas could go no farther. His legs trembled under Miguel's weight, and his throat burned with thirst. He laid Miguel down on the side of the path and knelt beside him. Raul walked on a few steps before noticing and turned back with an impatient glare. "We must keep moving," Raul said sharply. "If we stop, we will never leave this place." Tomas shook his head. "If we keep pushing, Miguel will not survive." "Another hour. We must rest." Raul opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped. He looked at Miguel, so pale and weak, and for a moment his expression softened. But when his gaze returned to the treasure, the hardness returned. "Rest, then, but do not ask me to leave the gold." They waited under the shade of a wide tree. Tomas gave Miguel the last of their water, holding it gently to his lips. Miguel's eyes flickered open for a brief moment. He whispered something, so faint Tomas almost missed it, the masks watching. Then he fell silent again. Tomas froze. He looked around, heart racing, but saw nothing. The trees swayed, the shadows shifted, yet there was no sign of life. Still, he could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes were upon them. As evening approached, Raul grew restless. He paced back and forth, clutching the mask. His whispers grew louder, as though he spoke to the gold itself. Tomas listened with unease, hearing words that did not sound like Raul's own. It was as though the mask had a voice, and Raul was only repeating it. When night came, the chanting returned. This time it was not distant. It surrounded them, echoing from every side. Tomas stood with his knife in hand, his heart pounding. Shadows flickered between the trees, figures tall and silent, their golden masks gleaming in the moonlight. Raul dropped to his knees, raising the treasure toward the shadows. "You cannot take it," he shouted. "It is mine. I earned it. I bled for it. You cannot have it." Tomas grabbed his arm. "Raul, stop this madness. They are not flesh and blood. You cannot fight them. Leave the gold and save yourself." Raul pulled free, his eyes wild. "I will never leave it. This is my life now." The chanting grew louder. Miguel stirred, his lips moving once more. This time the words came clear, though they were not his own tongue. It was the same ancient language carved into the temple walls. His voice rose and fell in rhythm with the chanting outside. Tomas stared in horror. The curse was not just around them, but inside Miguel as well. Suddenly, the fire flared, bright without warning, though no one had fed it. Sparks flew high into the night sky. In that light, Tomas saw the truth. The masked figures were all around them, hundreds of them, their eyes glowing faintly. They did not move closer, but their presence weighed heavier than stone. Raul screamed and clutched the mask against his chest. "You will not take it. I am stronger than you. I am the master of this treasure." The ground shook. The stone road cracked beneath them, and a deep rumble echoed through the forest. The figures lifted their arms in unison, and the chanting reached a deafening roar. Miguel arched his back and let out a cry that was not his own voice. His eyes opened wide, glowing with a pale light. Words spilled from him in the ancient tongue, harsh and commanding. The figures outside fell silent at once. Then, as quickly as it began, the ground stilled. The figures melted back into the trees, leaving only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. The fire dimmed, returning to its normal glow. Tomas trembled, staring at Miguel. His friend lay limp, the glow fading from his eyes. He was breathing, but barely. Raul, however, was laughing. His laughter was broken and hollow, echoing through the night. "Do you see, Tomas? They fear us. They cannot take it from me. The treasure is mine." Tomas turned on him with fury. "You fool. They do not fear you. They are waiting, and when the time comes, they will take everything, even your soul." Raul's laughter died. but his grip on the mask did not loosen. That night, Tomas could not sleep. He sat awake, knife in hand, watching over Miguel. The jungle was quiet again, but it was the kind of silence that hides danger. He knew the final price had not yet been paid. By morning, Raul looked weaker. His eyes were sunken, and his hands shook, yet he carried the treasure still, though it bent his back and slowed his steps. Tomas carried Miguel, who seemed caught between life and death, whispering now and then in that strange language. The path stretched on, endless and cruel. Tomas no longer cared for the gold. All he wanted was to see Miguel safe, but with each step he felt the curse pressing harder, demanding its payment. Raul, blinded by greed, did not see it. He believed he had won. He believed the treasure belonged to him. But Tomas knew the truth. The curse was not broken. It was only waiting, and soon it would claim its final price. The jungle road stretched endlessly before them. Tomas walked with Miguel across his shoulders. His legs heavy but steady, Raul trailed behind, dragging his treasure with both arms. The golden mask shone in the weak sunlight, but Raul's body was bent and broken from its weight. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. Yet his grip on the gold never loosened. The forest around them seemed calmer now, though Tomas knew it was only an illusion. The curse had not left them. It walked with them, waiting for the right moment. The silence of the trees carried more weight than the heaviest stone dot by midday. Tomas heard water in the distance. Hope surged through him. He pushed forward and soon reached a wide river flowing fast and strong. Relief almost made his knees buckle. If they followed the river, he knew they might finally reach the villages at the jungle's edge. He laid Miguel down in the shade and filled a small flask with water. Miguel opened his eyes faintly, drinking with slow sips. His voice was weak, yet he spoke words that chilled Tomas. The river carries two paths. One is freedom, one is death. Tomas frowned, not sure if it was Miguel speaking or the curse. Using his voice again. Before he could ask, Raul stumbled to the water's edge and knelt, plunging his face into the current. When he rose, water dripping from his chin, he was laughing. "Do you see, Tomas? We made it. This river will take us home. With this treasure, we will rule our world." Tomas shook his head. "You are blind, Raul. Look at yourself. The treasure has stolen your strength, your mind, even your soul. If we carry it farther, none of us will leave this jungle alive." Raul's laughter turned to anger. He clutched the mask to his chest. "You are jealous. You always feared greatness, but I was meant for this. The gold chose me." As Raul spoke, a shadow spread across the river, though no clouds crossed the sun. The water grew darker, swirling with shapes like faces, eyes, and open mouths. Tomas stepped back, pulling Miguel away. Raul, however, leaned closer as if the water called him. The river roared louder, and the chant returned. It came not from the trees this time, but from the water itself. The voices rose from the rushing current, ancient and cold. The golden mask. And Raul's hands began to glow, its eyes shining like fire. Raul lifted it high, shouting, "I will never give you this. It is mine." The river surged upward, waves crashing without wind from the dark water. Figures rose, masked guardians, their bodies formed of liquid, their faces of shining gold. They surrounded Raul, their eyes burning. Tomas stood frozen, knife in hand, torn between fear and loyalty. He wanted to save Raul, but he knew this was the price the curse demanded. Raul fought, swinging the mask as if it were a weapon. His cries filled the air, desperate and wild. But the guardians did not strike him with blades. Instead, they pulled at the mask, their hands of water wrapping around it. Raul held on, screaming, "No, no, it is mine." The mask blazed with light, brighter than the sun. Raul's body stiffened. His scream turned into silence, his face frozen in terror. Then, in an instant, he was gone. Only the mask remained, sinking slowly into the river's depths. The water grew calm again, as if nothing had happened. Tomas stood shaking, his heart heavy. He had lost his friend, though in truth Raoul had been lost long before. He looked at Miguel, who lay on the river bank with eyes closed. His breathing was faint, but he was alive. The guardians did not return. The jungle was silent once more. Tomas knew the curse had taken its final price. With Raoul gone and the treasure claimed by the river, the air felt lighter. The shadows seemed to fade. Tomas lifted Miguel again and began to walk along the river's edge. The current would lead them out, he told himself. Step by step, he carried his friend forward. Days passed. Tomas no longer counted the hours. His body grew weak, but he refused to stop. Miguel drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes whispering strange words, sometimes silent. Each morning Tomas expected to find him gone. Yet each morning Miguel still breathed out at last. The forest began to thin. The trees grew smaller, the air less heavy. Then, one morning, Tomas saw smoke rising in the distance. A village, relief-filled. Him with new strength, he hurried forward, stumbling into the clearing where people gathered around him. The villagers helped him at once, taking Miguel into their care, giving Tomas food and water. They asked where he had come from, but Tomas only shook his head. He had no words for the nightmare behind him. For many weeks, Tomas and Miguel stayed among the villagers. Miguel's strength returned slowly, though the strange language sometimes still passed his lips when he dreamed. Tomas feared it meant the curse had not fully left them. But Miguel woke each time with clear eyes, and that gave Tomas hope. One evening, as the sun set over the river, Tomas sat with Miguel by the fire. Miguel's voice was quiet but steady. Raoul is gone, but the curse is not. It will remain as long as men hunger for what is buried in those ruins. Tomas nodded. Then we must carry the truth. The treasure is not a prize. It is a trap. Let no one else fall to it. Miguel agreed, and from that day, both men spoke to no one of the gold, only of the dangers of the deep jungle. Their story became a warning, not of riches, but of ruin. Years passed. Tomas grew older. His hair turned gray. Miguel lived too, though he never fully escaped the shadows of that journey. Yet both men kept their promise. They guarded the secret, ensuring no other hunters would follow the path to the cursed treasure. And deep in the jungle, the river flowed over the golden mask, hiding it from human eyes. The chanting of the guardians faded into silence, waiting for the day when another hand might dare to claim what should never be touched. But for now, the curse slept, and the last of the treasure hunters lived on, carrying the heavy memory of what they had seen and what they had lost.